Hello, I'm Quilwick, and this is my first video, which I am recording on my crappy webcam, uh, for now. And today I would like to talk with you about Bionicle. Some of you out there may already be familiar with it, but I'm going to speak as if you're not, just to help everyone get caught up. Bionicle is an original IP created by Lego. It ran from 2001 to 2011. It started as an experiment to help Lego out of a bad financial spot where they were super reliant on Lego Star Wars and things based off stuff that other people had made. So they decided, hey, let's create our own story and make unusual figures for it using the Technic pieces. The sets are usually about this tall, depicting a single character. They're action figures. That's the idea. When I was young, I thought that Bionicle was super duper cool because they're robots and they have guns, and that just really did it for me when I was like a 10-year-old boy. And however, my parents never really bought me Bionicles. I was reliant on them for any toys that I got, and they didn't want to get me Bionicles. But now I am an adult and I can buy myself any children's toys I want. I have lots of them. It's fantastic. And I decided recently to try getting back into Bionicle, because here's the thing. I was able to buy things for myself long before I became an adult, but the thing is, when I became old enough where I was a child who could buy myself toys, Bionicle ended at the same time. I managed to grab a couple of them, but then they stopped, so I could never really dive into it to the extent that I probably would have. So now, I found the Biomedia Project, which is a really cool website which compiles all the stuff that Bionicle did, because it told its story across books, comics, video games, movies, and just a bunch of other things. And it was really hard to keep track of. So now it's all in one place, and I've been reading through that, and honestly, it's really good stuff. I can get into that more later, but it's good stuff. I like it a lot. And yeah, surprisingly. So then I decided I want to buy some Bionicles for myself, except they're all old. You have to like track them down on eBay, and it's hard to find ones that don't have pieces missing or broken. And even then, they're just real expensive. However, Lego did experiment for a little bit with making Bionicles in the same method that they make their traditional minifigures. So about this big, with a few articulated pieces, and they come with large sets that you construct with normal bricks. This came in 3 waves, and I have figures from each wave, and I'm going to talk about them because there's a lot of interesting things to say about them. So let's get to that. All right, so the first wave covered the story arc involving the Toa Hordika. That sounds like nonsense. Don't worry about it. Toa are warriors. They're the good guys, and they come in a whole bunch of batches of 6. And each Toa team has their own name. The first group were known as the Toa Mata, and the second was known as the Toa Metru. And then the Toa Metru, for a brief period of time, turned into the Toa Hordika. And that's these toys. It's the first wave, so they're just trying it out. We have Vakama right here. You will notice right off the bat that, unlike traditional Lego minifigures, these Bionicle figures are not articulated at all. They kind of suck in that way. They also have a 2x2 base, while Lego minifigures can stand on a 2x1, which means that they're really awkward in most spaces that would be occupied by minifigures. They also came with a bunch of weapons. I'm going to talk a bit more about the weapons in a little bit, but to note about these specific weapons is that they are all on a long pole with 2 handholds, because that's the only way that these guys can hold weapons, because their arms don't move. You just put it like that. There we go. And now Vakama is holding a spear. One thing I will say is that each individual Toa has a unique figure. They're kind of hard to tell apart because they have no detail at all. They're simply um, unpainted sculptures, but each one has a unique shape and pose, which is pretty neat and not going to be the norm from here on out. So, first wave, 1 out of 5, just not great. I just have them stuck on my shelf because they're rare and probably valuable to someone somewhere. But you can't really play with them, and these are for kids. You want to play with them. I'm an adult, and I want to play with them because that's what you do with toys. So now we're on to wave 2. This covers the Toa Mari versus the Baraki. This is pretty cool because now we have bad guys, and we're going to talk about the bad guys. What's really fun about having robots with guns is when there are other robots with guns that they can shoot at. This one is a little bit awkward, while the first one is like pure, hey, can this be a thing? The second one is kind of like figuring things out. The big thing we get is a system. This system, we have unarticulated legs, which attach to a body, which rotates at the hips. And then we have these arms. These arms, which come in 2 pieces, are probably the biggest thing that Lego got out of this brief experiment. Because these 2 pieces appear everywhere in modern sets. They're just standard. There are a million things that you can do with them. Extremely versatile. Very nice. The one thing to differentiate these figures is with the heads. You put the head on this, and boom, now it's Matoro. Now it could be anyone. Now it is specifically Matoro. The head is the one thing that gives him life. Now, this is kind of rough considering Bionicles are so varied in physical appearance. Most Bionicles, you can take the head off and you still know who it is. They're just like that. They're all very unique. But minifigures are specifically built off a very distinct skeleton. Usually minifigures are differentiated by the paint that you put on them. And a big reason for that is that they're just a lot smaller. So, yeah, they had to make some sacrifices, and they decided the heads are going to be what does it. We're going to give them this nice, generic, cool robot-looking body that can apply to, as a representation for most Bionicles. But then, the head is what's going to give them life. Here's the thing. For the first wave, they could only afford to make 5 heads. Is it 5? I believe it's actually 6. They could only afford to make a few of these heads, which is really rough when you're making at least 12 characters in this wave. 6 Toa, 6 Baraki. The Baraki are the bad guys for this arc, as mentioned before. They're mutated fish people who used to be kings a million years ago. It's actually pretty great in that these limited heads actually results in this fun little bit with Kalma and Alec. And that you'll notice that they both have 3 eyes. That's because they both have Kalma's head. And Kalma is the only Baraki that has 3 eyes. But because they're repeating pieces in order to represent all these characters, whoops, Alec now has an extra eyeball. Which is a shame. It gets really bad with the Mari, and that they actually have 2 heads, but they look extremely similar, and unlike the case with the Baraki, they're not. This particular sculpt is not supposed to depict any specific Toa. So what it kind of leads is none of the Toa really look like themselves. It's really bad, particularly with Kongu, who has a very flat face, and it just does not paint well onto this curved shape. Uh, the one There are two exceptions though. Jeller and Huki have Huki's head, so that's nice, I guess. So they did come with playsets, which is nice. Although I'm reviewing the figures. The figures themselves, a huge improvement from the previous one. You can play with these guys. These guys, they also came with really cool weapons. I said I'd get back to those, but here's one of them. You know what? Let's make this a weapon segment. There are a bunch of them. They're really cool. My one complaint is that they're not really designed to resemble any specific Bionicle's weapon. They just kind of made a bunch of generically Bionicle-esque tools and threw them together. Again, because it was probably a cost thing. They couldn't afford to give everyone unique heads. But at least you can play with these guys. Huge improvement over Wave 1. Now let's get to Wave 3. Wave 3 is the best one in my opinion. It has the Toa Inika and the Paraka, which is pretty cool. Although it takes place chronologically before the Mari Baraki arc. The Toa Inika, by the way, are the same characters as the Toa Mari. They just become the Mari when they have to go underwater to fight the Baraki. The first big thing we get here, we have a bigger budget, so every character gets their own head. Again, this is really important because, as I said before, the heads are the only defining feature of these figures. The heads are very nice and actually resemble the characters. This is really cool in the case of the Paraka, because the Paraka have probably the most recognizable designs of any group of Bionicles ever. They have these big mean faces and these giant teeth and these giant tails on their heads. I love how they did these tails. This is another piece that became standard for LEGO. This piece has been used mostly for vines, but a few other things. It exists on Marvel's symbiotes, so Venom and Carnage use them, and they slot into a hole in the back of the Paraka's head in order to give them their iconic tails. And just as an added little bonus LEGO creativity outlet, the Toa also have these holes in the back of their heads, so you can give them the Paraka tails if you want. They don't have tails, but they're your toys. You can do what you want with them. This is kind of nice in that it opens up something that the larger Bionicle toys had a lot going for it, in that you could take them apart and build your own Bionicles using different pieces. So this little outlet for customability is nice. I would have liked to see them continue down this route. Unfortunately, these are the last figures that they made. Before just going back to making the regular large ones, which is fine, because those figures are great. They lasted them 10 years before running out of steam. I think probably the big thing that killed them is the fact that after 10 years, the lore had gotten so complicated that newcomers really couldn't get into it. Especially after the death of Makuta Pterodax, who was the main villain of the story for the first 10 years. At that point, things just got so crazy that you couldn't understand anything unless you've been into Bionicle since the start. And as I mentioned before, they told a story over a dozen different mediums in a dozen different places. So if you wanted to know it all, you'd have to go hunting for all that stuff. And honestly, if you're 10 years old, you can't do that. The Biomedia Project didn't exist but back then, so you had to go and convince your parents to buy you all these books and comic books and movies yourself. And while that makes money for Lego, a lot of parents probably couldn't do that, and a lot of kids probably wouldn't be able to track it all down. But anyway, those are the figures. They went from 2004 to 2006, I believe. Um, and those are my thoughts on them. Honestly, solid. The first wave is trash. Put them on a shelf to as a status symbol. Hey, I have these. They're old. Yay, good for you. I have the ones that you can actually play with. Uh, and better yet, the ones that you can play with and actually look like the characters they're supposed to represent. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching and paying attention to me. Um, I'll see you later. Oh, what's this? This is what we're going to talk about next time. Thanks.